All right, this is Unit 7 in the textbook, Myers textbook. It is Chapter 6. This is the first video. The topic that we'll be exploring is observational learning, and it is covering pages 242 to 249. Okay, so some species or higher level animals, specifically like humans, can learn without direct experience, and this is known as observational learning. So it is, the definition is kind of what the word stands for. You observe something and you learn it through observation. It's also sometimes known in some textbooks as social learning, and you're learning by observing others and imitating others. Modeling is the process of observing and imitating a specific behavior. So the behavior is modeled for you, and then you're able to repeat the behavior. So somebody shows you how to shoot a basketball, and then you go and try and shoot the basketball the exact same way. Another example of somebody that may model something for you is a teacher may show you how to set up a paragraph, and then you try and model it the exact same way. Animals that are observational learners are monkeys they found, crows, rats, pigeons, and gorillas, all model behavior. Whether humans show them certain behaviors or they may watch a certain behavior of another animal and then they repeat the same behavior. There is a biological connection that your book mentions. They found mirror neurons in the frontal lobe are active when observing another performing a certain action. So there's actually neurons that watch somebody model a certain behavior, and then those are ignited when you're actually trying to perform the exact same behavior. Research was uncovered by Giacomo Rizzolatti in 2002. PET scans have revealed this activity. As we observe other person's actions, our brain actually generates inner stimulation. Mirror neurons help with imitation and emotions. When we see somebody portraying a sad emotion, usually we're going to then probably portray some sort of sad emotion back to them. We're not going to smile if they start crying. A lot of the times people, if they see somebody start crying, they're going to show a sad emotion as well. So here's kind of a little image of a child in the first picture watching TV, and you could see this man pulling apart a toy. In the second picture then, the little boy is given a toy, and then in the third image, the little boy tries to pull apart the toy after he's just watched the model do the exact same behavior. So this 14-month-old boy in Andrew Melkoff's laboratory is imitating behavior he's seen on TV. In the top photo, the infant leans forward and carefully watches the adult pull apart the toy. In the middle photo, he has been given the toy, and then in the bottom photo, he actually pulls apart the toy, imitating what he's seen with an adult. Okay. Albert Bandura is somebody who really explored the social learning theory or came up with the social learning theory. For 6 decades, he's been studying behavioral psychology. He was born in 1925. In 1961, he did his famous Bobo doll experiment. He's rated by the APA as one of the top well-known psychologists of all time, besides Piaget, who we've learned about, Freud, who we've talked about, and then we will discuss Skinner. So he's one of the top well-known psychologists of all time. So he's very famous for his Bobo doll experiment, which I will explain next. Okay, so picture the scene from a famous experiment by Albert Bandura, the pioneer researcher of observational learning, social learning. Okay, a preschool child works on a drawing in a room. An adult in another part of the room is building with Tinker toys. As the child watches, the adult gets up and for nearly 10 minutes pounds, kicks, and throws around the room a large inflated Bobo doll. Okay, so it's kind of like a big balloon animal, yelling, "Sock him in the nose, hit him, knock him down, kick him." The child is taken to another room, filled with appealing toys. Soon the experimenter returns and tells the child that he's decided to save these toys for other children, and says, "We have to leave these room. These toys are kind of for other children. You can't play with these good toys anymore." Okay? She takes now the very frustrated child to a third adjacent room containing very few toys. However, it does have a Bobo doll. Okay. Left alone, what does the child do? Okay. Now, the little kid is a little bit frustrated, was told that they can't play with the good toys anymore, has watched an older adult model that frustration on that Bobo doll. Right? Compared with children not exposed to the adult model. Right? So some kids weren't exposed to the adult kicking the Bobo doll, but the kids that were, okay, those who viewed the model's actions were much more likely to lash out on the doll. Apparently observing the aggressive outburst lowered their inhibitions. But something more was also at work. The children imitated the very acts they had observed and used the very words they had heard. So they were saying things like suck him in the nose, hit him down, kick him, etc. Okay, so observational learning again. Here's the lady in the top pictures. She's actually punching the Bobo doll. She's throwing the Bobo doll. Okay, she's kicking the Bobo doll. And then when the little kid gets their hands on it, you can see the little girl sitting on it, the little boy throwing it, them lashing out at it. This is the famous Bobo doll experiment. Notice how the children's actions directly imitate the adults. So this was done at Stanford University in 1961 by Albert Bandura. And he kind of, again, put out the message that we learn through modeling behavior from others. Okay, so observational learning. Observational learning occurs pretty much in 4 stages. Usually you're paying attention and perceiving features of another behavior. Then you have to remember the behavior. Then you reproduce the behavior. And then you're being motivated to learn and carry out the behavior. So those 4 things pretty much happen with observational learning. So when you're watching something from me and you're trying to learn something from me, okay, a lot of times you have to pay attention to me, then you have to remember it, then you have to reproduce it, then you have to be motivated to carry it out. Okay. Some people ask questions, does social learning always occur? We don't necessarily imitate everything we see. We're more likely, however, to imitate things we perceive when they're similar to us. Okay. Those who are successful and admirable. Behaviors that are being reinforced rather than punished. So if they're supported, you're more likely to be following those. And whose actions and words are consistent. Okay, so think about a teacher that you're more prone to follow and exhibit a lot of the same behaviors, or a coach or a friend. Okay, if you find them very similar, if you find them admirable or successful, if you're not being punished for them and you're being like kind of complimented on them, and the person that's exhibiting those behaviors are consistent and they actually kind of do the exact same behaviors, you're going to be more prone to follow through with those behaviors. Okay, so I'm a teacher and I can't say something like, you should please be quiet in class while the rest of the students are taking a test. Okay, and then I start talking to another student. Okay, how then are you supposed to be consistent with the behavior if I'm not even following the behavior? That's what the 4th one means. All right, so there are some pro-social effects. Pro-social effects are good effects with modeling behavior. The good news is that pro-social models, positive or helpful, can have pro-social effects on a child. Okay, such as if they're good models, right, they could encourage good manners, they could encourage people to read, they could encourage somebody to attend school, to be a good student. They could exhibit nonviolence. The book talked about how an advocate for nonviolence was Martin Luther King. Okay, models are most importantly effective when they are consistent, when their actions are consistent with their personal behavior. So kind of what I just talked about before. If the model really lives out the daily life or events of how they act, okay, they say don't do drugs, don't drink and drive. It's a professional athlete that's telling you this. And then they go and do those things, how are you actually supposed to follow them, right? So if they're consistent with their actions, you're going to be more prone to do it. The book showed a picture of a model player of the Los Angeles Galaxy soccer star. David Beckham provides a powerful role model for aspiring players at the youth soccer clinic in Harlem. As the 16th century proverb states, example better than precept. So he's a very pro-social model, and there's a lot of pro athletes that are good models for kids, teachers that are good models for kids, a lot of people in the community that are good advocates for kids, modeling good behavior. However, there are some antisocial effects on social learning, so some bad stuff. The bad news is that observational learning may have antisocial effects. This helps us understand why abusive parents might have aggressive children and why many men who beat their wives have wife-battered fathers. Okay? Critics note that being aggressive could be passed down by parents' genes. So some people argue that no, it's not through observational learning. It's all a biological thing that the genes are being passed down. But with monkeys, we know it can also be environmental. Okay, so they have done experiments with monkeys that were abused, and then they saw those monkeys that were abused were more prone to be abusive to their kids. In a study after study, young monkeys separated from their mothers and subjected to high levels of aggression grew up to be aggressive themselves. The lesson we learn as children are not easily unlearned as adults, and they are sometimes visited on future generations. And there's a lot of studies on abusive parents and those kids who end up becoming abusive adults themselves. Again, some people argue that this isn't a case, but there are a lot of studies that do support it. So one antisocial behavior is violence. A big question that has been asked for a number of years now is TV impacting children and how violent they have become. And a lot of research has been done on TV and violence. Some correlation studies do support this link. In the United States and Canada, homicide rates doubled between 1957 and 1974, just when TV was introduced and spreading. Moreover, census regions with later dates for TV service also had homicide rates that jumped later. While South Africans were introduced to television in 1975, a similar near doubling of homicide rates began after 1975. So they're seeing doublings of homicide rates. Now that could be because of TV or it could be because of a lot of other reasons. Elementary school children with heavy exposure to media violence, TV, videos, and video games also tend to get in more fights. Okay. Here's another statistic. Between the ages of 5 and 15, the average child will witness at least 13,000 deaths on TV. There was also a study showed that elementary school going children who were exposed to violent television, video games, also express an increase in aggression. Okay, and there's a nice chart that lays this out in the book as well. So that was the correlation. So now they tried to do some experimentation and research on this to really find out if TV causes kids to be aggressive. So to pin down causation, psychologists have to use experiments. It's the only way they could really figure out a cause. In this case, researchers randomly assigned some viewers to observe violence and others to watch entertaining nonviolence. Does viewing cruelty prepare people when irritated to react more cruelly? To some extent, it does, they found. The consensus among most of the research community reported by the National Institute of Mental Health in 1982 is that violence on television does lead to aggressive behavior by children and teenagers who watch the programs. They did see an increase to those kids that watched the television versus those kids that didn't. This is especially so when an attractive person commits seemingly justified, realistic violence that goes unpunished and no visible pain or harm is done. Okay? They say these are the results. The violence viewing effect seems to stem from two factors. One is imitation. As we noted earlier, children as young as 14 months will imitate acts that observed on TV. So you could have a year-old kid, okay, watch something on TV and they're more prone to react to it. That's imitation. They're trying to imitate it. As they watch, their mirror neurons stimulate the behavior, and after this inner rehearsal, they become more likely to act it out. One research team observed a 7-fold increase in violent play immediately after they viewed Power Rangers. These children, like those who saw earlier in the Bobo Doll experiment, often precisely imitated the model's violent acts, including flying karate kicks. Imitation may also have played a high role in the first 8 days after the 1999 Columbine High School massacre, when every United States except Vermont had to deal with copycat threats or incidents. Pennsylvania alone had 60 threats of school violence. So they see it on TV, they see a rise for it, and now they're more prone to do it. Okay. Another indication of why this happened, prolonged exposure to violence also desensitizes viewers. They become more and more indifferent to it when later viewing a brawl, whether on TV or in real life. Adult males who spend 3 evenings watching sexually violent movies become progressively less bothered by rapes and slashing. Compared to those in a control group, the film watchers later expressed less sympathy for domestic violence victims, and they rated the victims' injuries as less severe. We're becoming more and more of a society that continuously sees people getting attacked. Women, children, okay, especially living in Chicago with all the violence. We're desensitized now to all these acts. Okay, that's what they're saying. And so we don't find, when we see somebody getting hurt or we see somebody getting into a fight, it's not as hurtful or painful to us because it's something that we continuously see. Okay, so these are the 2 reasons that they say that, 2 effects the TV is leading to change our behavior. We're becoming more and more prone to imitate these things, and we're becoming desensitized because of all the violence that's seen on TV. Okay, some people don't support this at all. Okay, and they say that, it could be something in the genes, but a large percentage of people do support that what they're watching, kids on the video games, kids watching aggressive TV are going to become more aggressive. And more research is being done on this topic. Okay, so this video explored kind of an easier topic to start us off for the semester. It's observational learning. What you see is what you do. Okay, observational learning is also known as social learning. Biological indicators, mirror neurons, impact our behavior. Okay, Albert Bandura and his Bobo doll experiment is something that you should be familiar with, and you should be familiar with how some of it, social learning can be pro-social, good stuff, and it also could be something that's not so good, antisocial behaviors. See you on Tuesday.